Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Dr. Michael Turner. I'm the nation's premier faith-based men's health coach and concierge physician.
Awesome. And you've got a story to share with us today. Where in this world does that story begin?
Yeah, this story begins in 1992. I am age 16 and we're overseas. We're in the Dominican Republic, which, if you know a bit of geography, it's one of the largest islands there in the Caribbean. And on one side is Haiti, on the other side is the Dominican Republic. So I'm there as an exchange student, fresh off the boat from my comfortable existence in California. And, getting used to this new language, new culture, not knowing anyone, etc. And I'm an adventurous guy. I kind of feel like I'm always up for a challenge. I like to explore and such. So it was quite something. It was quite overwhelming in a sense, too. I was in a developing country. This is before cell phones. This is before internet. I'm, wandering around, taking little motorcycles to and from school and, talking to kids who are out selling peanuts on the corner and making friends and things. And this really ramps up where I start to have some real difficulty in my host family. That's sort of chapter one. I had a time with my family. They had just gone through a divorce. One brother was just young and jealous and antagonistic. So he and I were always in conflict. And so I found myself just despondent. I was crying myself to sleep most nights. I was wishing I was back with my family. I was wishing I was back with my high school friends instead of these, feeling stupid for not knowing Spanish so well and just kind of sitting in the back of class, so feeling isolated. And a lot of prayers started to go up, which there's backstory. I had grown up in a Christian family, but it wasn't ever really personal and it wasn't vibrant. It wasn't necessary. So at this point, my 16-year-old heart is in tears and pouring out prayers every night. Like something's got to change. I just got in a fist fight with my brother. I know, God, you didn't bring me all the way down to the Dominican Republic just to be unhappy this whole year, And so a couple key events happened. Fast forward, I get a new family. So so the program ends up soliciting a new family. And so about 7 months into the year-long program, I'm with this new household. And when I come in, the vibe was totally different. They were welcoming. They were happy to see me. They're like, come on, we've had a student before. We're so glad you're here.
They were married, I'm assuming.
They were married, right?
that's
Married.
great, yeah.
I had, a brother my age who wasn't trying to get in fistfights with me and be antagonistic. And I had an older sister who could give me rides around the neighborhood, and she had a car. And I just welcomed and I felt at peace. And I was like, wow, thank you, God. This is amazing. This year's about to turn around, and fast forward a little bit on with this family. And then kind of the climax of some things which get insight for me and actualization. I know that's one of your topics. The climax of all this is there was emptiness that I started becoming aware of in my life. Okay. And it was in the distinction and in the contrast between this wonderful, loving new home that I was in and then my current state and condition. And I couldn't really see the contrast until I showed up there. But when I showed up, I started to realize, like, wow, my host dad, they have a lot of joy in their heart. They have a lot of peace. They seem to have a lot of purpose. They're very gracious towards people. My mom walks around singing songs to God, for no good reason. I'm like, I never sing a song to God unless I'm in church and somebody says, open up to hymn number 50 and start singing, right? And my mom's reading her Bible every night. I'm like, I don't read my Bible. It's very boring and it's very hard to understand. But somehow for her, it was captivating and enlightening. And so there was this contrast, and I started to feel empty and feel a lot of angst. And ultimately, then I had this vision. I don't think I was a dream exactly. I'm not sure, but there's just this very clear picture in my head. And this is the hype of the whole story here. And in this vision, imagine you're watching a big cruise ship come into port, and it's pitch dark. And we're talking some small little port in Europe, some little Greek island or Italian island or something. You're sitting on the rocks. So I'm on the rocks at the shoreline. It's pretty hard. It's pretty uncomfortable. There's not a chair for me or anything. And I'm sitting in pitch blackness. And left to right across my vision, just real slow and real distinct, is this beautiful cruise ship. Okay. Imagine like the Titanic, an old school classy cruise ship. So there are waiters wandering around in tuxedos, right? With boats on, serving hors d'oeuvres. There's people laughing, clinking champagne glasses. There's women in beautiful dresses. There's a live band playing with strings, right? There's baby white lights everywhere. There's just this gorgeous, warm, comfortable, enjoyable, fun, purposeful, lively, enveloping vibe that's going by. And the thing is, Eric, I'm not there. I'm watching it. I'm sitting in the darkness, in isolation, and in physical pain and discomfort, and I'm watching something go by. I'm watching the ship, and I'm not on that ship. And when I sort of snapped out of this image, I was like, dang, I on that ship. I need to be over there. What does that represent? And it represented life with God, and it represented what I was seeing around me and my family. And so, through some crucial conversation I ended up having with my host mom, I sort of found God, if you will, or I would use the phrase "got born again," or God found me is another way of saying it as well. And so I came back from the DR just totally changed and renewed, and it ended up shaping the course for my future life in business and medicine as well.
I love that.
Yeah.
One of the things that I found is that people have these profound experiences, especially when they're young and when they get back to reality, so to speak, right? We've had folks that have been on Egypt tours and ayahuasca
Mhm,
journeys, abroad, or they've
mhm,
traveled across, Africa for a charity.
mhm.
They have this incredible experience and then they get home. And then they get back to life. They get back to all their old friends. They get back to they pick all the stuff that wasn't when they had the experience,
Yeah,
and learnings that they had and the change that they wrought is difficult to upkeep, right? They
I'd
start to
say.
lose a little bit of it.
Yeah.
How were you able to keep it? How were you able to sustain the change that in you in the DR and carry it forward through today?
I see. I would say partly through support and accountability and encouragement. So upon going back to the US, I started hanging out with a different group of people, at high school. I started going to group services, at my church, and being around some people who were trying to be more positive and live their best relationship with God that they could in their high school way. So that was helpful, changing my peer group a bit. I think the other thing quite helpful was journaling. I'm a big fan of journaling. I think it has tremendous application for life and business. I can go back today and look at exact journals that I've written, handwritten from the year in the Dominican Republic in 1992. When I'm journaling, it's like it calls it to mind and it refreshes it. And speaking of neuroscience and neuroplasticity, I know you're a big fan of that, right? Whenever you call a memory to mind, it reinforces it. It strengthens it. And if you even a mistake in the memory, the mistake gets too. So you can have sort of false memories and ideas that people plant in your mind. And if you say it enough time, you start to believe and think it's true. So that just illustrates the power of this. So journaling and going back and refreshing my mind and my memories, and it's like, yeah, this did happen. I was feeling that way. I was crying every night. That was distressful. My mom did say that, I did have this vision. There was a cruise ship. Like all of that is journal and it's down, man. It's been reinforced so many times in my mind now that it's dialed in and it's, engaging, keeping me moving forward.
I'm glad to meet another journaler. My entry was when I was 5 years old. I have
Really?
my mom was dictating for me into my journal.
Mm,
She was like, you're never this right. You want to get these thoughts down, and it's simple things, right? Today I
yeah.
played with my toys and I went outside and stuff like that. But then I went on a service mission in my 20s, and I have every day documented, and I can go back to those memories and I can find them. And sometimes it's not even like a recounting of the day. Sometimes I'm just complaining, you know what I mean? Or just like I'm sad and I'm trying to get all those emotions down. And so that I call it my special box. I got this big chest with all of my journals in it from last, what is that, 25 years. And I'm able to go and find those moments, and I'll just open up a random page and I'll look at what was going on, and immediately it starts to come back to me like, oh yeah, like I remember when we went to that house, and I'm able to. The thing that does it for me is I try to send the love to that version of myself, and it makes me a tremendous amount of gratitude, because oftentimes the person who is journaling at that time is hoping and wishing and praying for the things that I have right now. And I'm able to just like send all that good energy back to that 22 or 18-year-old self, and it just fills me with this, what is it, oxytocin that I'm
Sure.
mixing my with, and I'm curious, you have this great dual experience of being a business owner and being a physician. What are some of the ways that you are able to elevate your vibration, right? Where you're able to get out of the stress, especially in the business, right? Where you're able to like stop, pause, and game the neurochemicals that are flowing
Mhm,
through your body to help elevate
mhm.
yourself to a higher plane.
Sure. I'll mention 4 things. There's all daily routines and morning routines are all the rage right now, right? Like everyone's got one on social media, and some of
Yeah, it's
them
good.
blow up the internet, and everyone wonders what Tony Robbins does to start his day, etc.
Yeah.
So I have that I try to do every day, and this helps keep my vibration up and keep me in a good zone, right? So the first one is draw close to God. And I do that at the beginning of every day, not at the end, but I try to draw close to God. And um, nature is even the best way to do that, I found. So at minimum, I want to be looking out a window at a tree, watching the bird land, look at the sun come up, and just marvel, like, you know what, is the sun just hanging there in the sky. How many millions and bazillions of years, light years away, is like, I don't know, it's way out there. But yet something's physically coming off the sun, going through all that time and space dimension, and now hitting us here on earth. And this thing is keeping us alive. It's sustaining every bit of life on earth. If the sun went black, everything would die off. So this thing is like sending us messages from post dated back in time that are life giving, moment by moment by moment, and 24/7, 65. It can't fail, or we all go silent, right? Like that's a mystery. That's a wonder. That should cause appreciation, right? So simple things like that. And I try to draw close to God, using nature quite often, as first thing. But one of the other things I do every day is I try to learn something. I think that's really vital. You got to keep your mind sharp. You got to stay in a attitude of continuous learning, kind of Kaizen mindset, to use the Japanese frame work for that. I'm always trying to learn something every day. I oftentimes I'm challenging myself right now to expand my color vocabulary. Right, simple as that. It's like, okay, like most guys, our color vocabulary is very anemic unless we're involved in certain fields. It's like, is it red, blue, green, yellow, right? But if it's like your wife says it's chartreuse or vermilion or periwinkle, you're like, come again, what is that? So I decided, I'm going to up my game. I want to start learning actually colors. I want to have more of artist sense and appreciation, actually be able to name this color. And I could say, hey, I was wearing a, vermilion scarf as an accent piece. And I know what that means in my mind. Right. So I'm learning about wheel and color theory and the names of some of the most common color variations. Shout out to magenta and cyan, right? Like who knows what those are, but it turns out they're key. They're pretty important. So I'm trying to learn something. The third thing I try to do every day is do something physically hard, right? You could call this exercise. It doesn't necessarily have to be traditional exercise, but I want to do something physically hard, not just something physical. I want it to be physically hard, because what doesn't challenge you doesn't change you. And I want to be challenged. And so to me, doing something physically hard is it's just an opportunity and a stage to practice doing anything hard. And so I want to put myself through something physically hard every day and develop that fortitude and that resilience and that mindset of embracing challenges and pushing through. And then the last thing I do is eat good food. And so I'm a foodie. I think I'm one of those people that has extra taste buds. So I get a lot of pleasure from food. And so every day I'm literally thinking about, I need to eat some good food. I'm not just throw some oatmeal down the hatch, but I want good food today. And if I hit my good food target, it keeps my up nicely. So those are four of my keys.
That's great. I've been cooking all the meals in our house recently, and I got
Okay.
ChatGPT locking me in on the on meals too. So we got a lot of spaghetti squash and
Nice.
vegetables on the table now. And I read this book by James Redfield, and the name of it is escaping me, but
Mhm.
The Celestine Prophecy.
I've heard of it. I haven't read it,
Yeah.
but I've heard a bit about it. Yeah.
So, ironically, 1992 is when it was written. So you were years old when
Yep.
James Redfield was trying to shock the world with his Eastern Western blend.
Okay.
In that book, he meets I guess it would be like a mission of nuns and priests, and he goes to the table, and all of them are really slowly eating. They're like all like chewing really slowly,
Mhm.
like 30 bites per, like 30
Mhm.
chews per bite.
Right. Right.
And it explains to them like there is an elevation that happens when your taste buds are interacting with the other senses, and you can elevate your spirit to the point where you are having these like visual experiences while you're eating. And right after that, he goes to the top of a mountain and he experiences like nirvana. He's like aware of the whole universe, the sun, right? Getting through the clouds, cascading onto him, right? He feels at one with everything. I am God, God is me. And so food's a huge part of our life as well. I I wanted to go back to in your vision that you had. So I I'm a visionary guy. I've had chakra meditation experiences. I've had visions in church. I've had what I believe to be prophetic visions as well about like my family. And you know, I hesitate those experiences with like everybody in this world because some people aren't down for that kind of stuff. In It's really funny. So I was born and raised Mormon, and Mormons are hardcore. They love the Bible, but they also love the Book of Mormon. And we know the Book of Mormon was probably a fictitious creation of Joseph Smith, right? He did a really good job with it. It's an incredible work of art, but he puts together this story that's a combination of a couple of different ones from antiquity about the tree of life and the iron rod. So the iron rod is this story of Lehi and his son Nephi, and they hold the rod. They're in this mist, and there's of life at the end of this rod. It literally is like a railing that they have to hold on to get to the tree of life. And over across this like river is the great and spacious building. And on that building, there's a bunch of people partying and having fun, and it seems really amazing. And there are people who are leaving the iron rod to go and, partake in all this that's going on. So the takeaway from it's been interpreted by all the Mormon scholars for years and years and years. But the basic idea is that like the tree of life is God, your true north, right? The self, some people even say. And the iron rod is the word of God. Literally, there's a the Mormons sing about that. And the great and spacious building is the world. All the good, all the partying and stuff like that. And it's seems fun, but it's positioned as inside of the story. So when I contrast those two stories, this is what comes to mind for me. The path of the devout Christian, I think the devotee religion that glorifies some higher power
Mhm.
is typically very difficult. It is not a cruise ship party a lot of the time, right? Like you're signing up for sacrifice, you're changing friend groups,
Mhm.
you're going to church, you're being studious, you're taking the time, you're really like a zealot in your own way. And so when I think of ship passing and I think of like, okay, your ship was the tree of life. There it is over there. The path to get there, right? You got to jump into the water and swim over there to get there. You got to build a boat and go get to the cruise ship, or you got to hail it and bring it over to you. So I'm curious, like, as you had you snapped, right, you rededicated, you reoriented your life, but what are the what that you've gone through as a result of your faith, and how have you been able to overcome those difficulties?
Yeah, great question. I think some of the strongest difficulties faced were in my personal life with being married. I've been married twice before. I'm married for the third time. And so I had some tremendous faith crises and personal development that grew out of that I'd be happy to tell you. I've had some business challenges that were tremendous too, which I'll get to. But just to go back to the first part of your question there about the demands and the arduous nature, perhaps, of, living a devout life. This, to me, there's an antidote to that. And this is the beautiful and singular thing about the Christian message. It's not just a message of you have to go do a bunch of things, right? Like you have to stop having sex with your girlfriend and not drink and, not smoke and not hang around with, like, it's not a bunch of knots and rules. It's not at its core that. The Christian message at its core is more about what God's trying to give you. It's a gift. It's not you must do something. It's more like God did something. Are you willing to just receive it? Another way of saying that is everything that God demands from you, ultimately, he's also trying to supply. He's trying to do that in you and through you. He doesn't leave it just on your own. So it's not like scale this mountain and there's signposts all the way and only the most diligent, sold out, strong people get to the top of the mountain. It's more like God's walking you along the path or up the mountain and even carrying you at times, right? Because you're too weak and you're too frail, but that's how much he loves you and that's how much he cares for you. And so for me, that good life with God, that's what it was. It was the cruise ship. Like being with God actually brought more satisfaction, more peace, etc. Although there were life challenges that were difficult, I never got away from the idea that like God was guiding me through. I never felt like it was just me on my own, right? Another way that we talk about that is the difference between just a religion and a relationship, right? And so a religion has rules and duties and can produce guilt and stress. A relationship has to do with love and mutuality and amiability and commitment, and showing up for each other, right? And if you can start to understand or connect to God in that sense, that's very powerful, carries you forward. But to go back to some of my greatest challenges, I'll just say my first two marriages. My first marriage, I was 27. I married this hot, amazing looking woman who was literally petitioned on the street at times for modeling jobs. And she went to church. She had a good family. And this was all great. The biggest challenge on my side was I had a very dismissive and commandeering and dominant and unsympathetic leadership style. It was like, okay, you're married to me. That's cool. I'm in charge. All right. So I'm just going to go do this and I'll kind of tell you about it. But I'm not necessarily needing a lot of input and I'm not looking for a lot of like consultation. Like just let me do the thing and like you show up happy as the wife and tell me how amazing I am. Right. And that's not a good mutual adult
Yeah.
decision-making paradigm. Right. So that caused a lot of its own stresses. I also had some anger management problems and some frustration issues and stuff. And so and kids, by the way. So yes, so we had a child. We adopted 4 kids from foster care because I wanted to and share some love and just be, a Christian ministry to the community in that sense. So talk about crisis of my life. I had my dream wife. I had the family of 5 kids. I had a fresh new job. I was making good money. I had benefits. I was like working at the hospital. Things were rolling. I had a fancy house up on the hill, except it was all like crumbling. I would use the image of sand. It was like sand just going through my fingers. I'm like, I can't contain the problems that are seeping through me right now. Like, dang. And I fought for that marriage hard. I humbled myself. I went to Christian retreats, yada yada, read books, counseling, like all of that. But in the end, it's a relationship. 2 parties have to be there. And I think my wife was so hurt, wounded, frustrated, and ultimately kind of despondent about it that she's like, I'm out. I'm done. And I can understand that. I can understand that in many ways. So that hurt. Here I was feeling like a failure. I'm like, I don't have my kids. Now they're gone. They live in another state. I'm paying alimony and child support out the wazoo. I got so behind in my bills, I had to ask my parents to help me make a mortgage payment. I'm like, I haven't asked my parents for money since I was a teenager. And here I am, a 40-something-year-old man who's a doctor asking my parents so I don't bounce a mortgage check. I'm like, this is humiliating. So I felt like this failure and just the sense of humiliation and stuff. And God had to kind of talk me through that and pick me up, right? And this is the amazing thing. God's like, so to understand that you're loved and accepted by God because of the cross, that also allows you to be patient and gentle with yourself and coach yourself back up. It's kind of like Rocky's corner man, right? Like you're kind of beat up and stuff, but your corner man's like, hey, it's okay. Get back out. This is what you got to do. You're going to be all right. You're still a champion. Like you blew it last round. You acted like a dog, whatever. Your head wasn't right, but there's still another round coming. This ain't over till we say it's over. Get out there. And so so I felt like, okay, yeah, I did make some mistakes. Yeah, I own that. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to journal about it and I'm going to pray and be kind of become a person and grow out to Mike Turner 2.0 and help that to be a part of who I am again. So let me just learn my lessons so I don't have to go relearn these lessons. And so that's how I sort of shot out of the other side of that. In business, I mean, it's the same, right? You're going to have setbacks, challenges, feel like a failure, feel humiliated at times. Business will expose who you are, right? It's like a series of decisions that you make every single day. Are you organized? Are you disciplined? Do you play well with others? Do you manage people well? Do you have any sense of vision? Do you have any accountability? Do you have system? Like who you are goes on display in your business. And so it can be extreme interpersonal growth and development challenge and pathway. You know all this, of course, being in business. So yeah.
Learning it every day. Dr. Turner, where can everyone find you?
Oh, that's lovely. Well, I would direct people to 2 places. The primary one would be manafaithwellness.com, which is a collaborative website I launched recently with Dr. King and Dr. Nordell. I understand that you've had them on your show as well. We're all working together. It's exciting. And so our vision for that is that it's the world's premier faith-based health and wellness destination. So that's manafaithwellness.com. Besides that, I do some individual blogs and podcasts and such on Substack. And so you can find me at drturner.substack.com.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you, Eric. Glad to be here. I enjoyed it.
This has been the Pulse Ox Podcast. Please, if you found this episode valuable, give us a like on Spotify and share it with a friend.